I find a better click-through rate on Google Discover than I do on traditional Google search because what's being presented is curated so heavily from Google's brain of how you operate online. A lot of people don't understand really what Google Discover is, but it's a curated feed of content that comes up on mobile devices. You know, whether you're Android or Apple, you can have access to Google Discover. And Google displays what they call cards below like a search bar. And these cards are based on your search preferences, you know, what you're typing, and also your search history, and also your location. I found that the best way to optimize for Google Discover is to send the signals to Google that this is a timely piece of content that people are interested in.
Our guest today, Kyle Brady, is a Google Discover optimization consultant and the founder of Drivin Vibin, an industry-leading consumer news site in the RV and camping niche. He and his wife ditched the 9-to-5 grind to become full-time RVers, and in the process, Kyle became an expert at amplifying content to increase brand awareness and revenue, and is here today to share some of his secrets. In this conversation about SEO and especially Google Discover SEO, we covered many different topics, such as the difference between optimizing for Google search engine page results and Google Discover, how to do a keyword research, building an SEO content creation team, best SEO tools and plugins, and much more.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Kyle, how are you?
Good, man. Thanks so much for having me on today.
It's my pleasure. I looked at your one sheet and it's very interesting and inspiring. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. I am hoping to cover a lot of topics that I don't know a lot about. So
yeah, well, I'm happy to talk to you. And if you have any RV or camping questions, you can shoot those at me too.
Awesome. This is maybe later because as I told you before, me and my wife, we are digital nomads, but we are not into RVs just yet. But maybe after the conversation, I probably look into your website and see about RVs, because I think it can be a very great adventure. And if we're already talking about RVs, so can you share about how you guys started this crazy adventure?
Yeah, totally. So, fast forward to 7 years where we are today, running a publishing company and a digital agency. I just want everyone to know that 6 years ago, I had absolutely no understanding of any of this stuff, content creation, publishing, digital strategy. So my wife and I got started about 6 years ago. We decided, we're happy with what we're doing in life, but we want a little more adventure. And we thought maybe we'll just take a road trip for a year. Saved up, bought an RV, like every traveler these days, started a website along with that to share our journey. So that's really where our journey with the online content creation got started, as far as just getting out there, exploring America and writing about it on our blog very poorly. Over the course of, 1 to 3 first years, I realized, well, maybe I can get some sweet deals if I have a YouTube page or kind of write really specific articles. So we were trading, campsites for content and stuff like that. And I thought, I'm living the good life right now. But and as that journey continued on and on, we just realized we can do more and more to optimize it, which led us to where we are today, where we're totally focused on keyword research being presented in Google search and Google Discover. And we're at the point where our website's getting 3 million views a month and our YouTube channel's over 115,000 subscribers. So, we've got this formula down, and that's where we're at today in a home, part-time RVing, but running a few different digital agencies.
Nice. And the 3 million views, so is it like 100% organic, or do you use also paid, just to get a general idea?
99.99% organic. I dabble in paid ads on Facebook on the smallest scale possible, but it's almost 100% organic.
This is amazing. And a lot of the listeners of the show, I assume that they are in the transition phase between the 9-to-5 and starting their online journey. Many people, also for me, me and my wife, when we just started, it was very hard to sustain the 9-to-5 and then come back and have the energy to create your side gig, which hopefully will turn out to be like your main source of income. So can you share a bit about the process that you guys went through? Because you just took a year off There's no income?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, very little income. What we discovered that first year, we did save up, so we had a little savings account that we thought, we don't want to pull from it, but if we have to, it will be all right. And at the time, we were running an Etsy shop where we were selling antique maps on Etsy, and that was generating like $2,000 a month. I thought I can live off $2,000 a month, So we were fortunate in that time that we weren't chained to a 9 to 5. But, it wasn't a challenge as far as working it in, but it was a challenge as far as finding the structure and finding the routine still in the middle of traveling and also being out in the middle of nowhere with no internet. So it came with its own set of challenges, but not that I was coming home from work tired. To that point, one of the things that really set me free and really saved my time was understanding that I don't have to write about the content that I'm experiencing. Rather, I can find out what keyword research is. And I found it keywords, and I let the data then kind of dictate my workflow. And that really helps me stay focused.
A lot of people, obviously, SEO guys, are talking about keyword research. I'd love to hear your opinion. I mean, your tips and tricks, but something that I didn't hear very often. And when I saw you guys, what you're doing, so you put an emphasis on Google Discovery. Can you share a bit about this and connect this with the keyword research?
Totally. Let's talk about Google Discover first, because a lot of people don't understand really what Google Discover is. But it's a curated feed of content that comes up on mobile devices. Whether you're Android or Apple, you can have access to Google Discover. And Google displays what they call cards below like a search bar. And these cards are based on your search preferences, what you're typing, and also your search history, and also your location. And the cards consist of articles, of stories, of videos, and a few other things, sometimes, but mostly articles and videos are what you're going to see in those Discover cards. So as far as how does Google Discover relate to SEO, is they're two different completely things when it comes to intent, but they're so similar when it comes to a specific keyword. So in my space, we'll use an example like RV Cell Booster. It's a device that boosts your cell phone. And if I'm writing an article for Google search, I'll write maybe the 5 best RV cell boosters in 2021, super SEO title, and that's great. That can probably rank on the first page. We'll get some good clicks through it, but that's not necessarily the type of content that's going to be in Discover. In Discover, an article that I would write would be the dangers of traveling without an RV cell booster. So we're still working that keyword in there. And because someone searched RV Cell Booster in search, maybe the day before, the next day when they're pulling up their Discover feed, they're going to see my more dramatic Discover article. And it really works like clockwork. As long as you're focusing on keyword, but you just understand that there's a different intention between search and Discover.
So would you say that the Discover headlines are a bit more clickbaity?
I would hate to say clickbaity, but I would definitely say they pique a certain amount of interest in the viewer, And someone who's just scrolling through their phone, as I do when I'm looking at Discover, I want to be entertained, I want to be maybe informed, but I'm definitely not searching for a product at that moment. So Google is using its brain to do its best thing possible as far as deliver up valuable content. And it's doing that by taking something you were searching earlier in a search and then presenting you with other pieces of content rather than just that straight up informative piece.
So we talked about the difference in headline, and what is the difference in the content itself? Is it very different or is it kind of the same?
Yeah, as far as the content itself, you still want to work that keyword in there like traditional SEO article. But what we want to focus on more so is like timeliness, like something that could be slightly newsworthy. We might want to link to a news article instead of another like SEO page or something. And that way we can get Google like connecting the dots that this is a piece of, new information that might not be worthy in a year, but has a high amount of interest right now.
In regards to like the customer's intent, so do you believe that there is a huge difference? Let's say I have an e-commerce store. And should I expect worse conversion rates for the people who came from the Google Discover? Because these are more like people that they kind of pick their curiosity, but not necessarily were looking to buy or
yeah, as far as that goes, I find a better click-through rate on Google Discover than I do on traditional Google search because what's being presented is curated so heavily from Google's brain of how you operate online. But it brings up a good point. How can an e-com store even use any of this to their ability? And really, for me, content is king always. content is always the cheapest and longest lasting way to drive customers to a site. And this is what we use. We have an e-com store, RV educational store, where they can buy courses. And the only marketing we do for that is writing articles that ask questions, So we're teaching people how to camp off grid. So for the articles, we'll say, how much solar power do you need to camp off grid? What are the best generators for camping off grid? If someone's searching that, they want to learn how to camp off grid, and then we tie them into our camping off grid funnel. So for that funnel of camping off grid, we can say create 5 pieces of content, 3 of them straight SEO plays, like I just mentioned, and then 2 of them more discover, like the dangers of camping off grid, or 5 myths you don't know about camping off grid. Something with just a little more drama, but that someone might not be specifically searching in Google.
And in regards to like the on-page SEO, how can I know that I'm optimizing for Google Discover in opposing to optimizing to the Google SEO? So is there anything I should do on like the on-page?
This is the hardest part of it all, because optimizing on page for Google Discover is almost impossible. You'll have to optimize a few other ways. You obviously want to use that keyword you're searching for, but I found that the best way to optimize for Google Discover is to send the signals to Google that this is a timely piece of content that people are interested in. There are a few ways to do that. If you have a mailing list, once you publish that article, I would say send it out immediately to your mailing list. Be like providing your mailing list free information. You might have some offer to get those past purchasers back in, but putting that article in front of them is one of the main pieces. Putting it out on social, that's obviously a great step. So anything that we can do to drive clicks to this newly published article within, say, a window of 12 hours is the best way to optimize for Google Discover.
This means that you have to create content quite frequently. Am I correct?
I would recommend creating 8 pieces of content a month. Honestly, I would recommend that for anybody, period. And I wouldn't focus all my efforts on Google Discover. I would still focus 60 to 70% on traditional SEO, and then start experimenting with a few of those additional articles a month on Google Discover. Play around with some article titles, play around with some really niche things that is inside your industry that, there might not be a lot of other timely content about, but if someone's searching it on Google, that there's a chance that this Discover story will show up in their feed.
Obviously, creating 8 pieces of content can be kind of overwhelming. So can you share a bit about like how does your guys' process look like? And obviously, I assume that you have a team. So how can one do this if he only is like a solopreneur? Should he hire someone? What do you suggest?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I've gone through a lot of phases with this exact process. And it started with me writing an article every day. And I did that for probably 6 months.
Wow.
And that was very hard to, keep up. And one of the ways I was able to keep it up is because the keyword research led the articles. So with the keyword leading the articles, I then have a very solid structure of H1, H2, H3 headers, just, how I format the articles. That was able to make the process as concise as possible. It still was a huge burden to write that many articles, but that was 30 a month, 8 a month. Maybe you could really focus on and try that out for a few months. But once you do that, and once you see the success, you're going to think there's only one thing I have to do, and that's scale this process because it's working. So I need to do more of this. And so at that point, for me, I hired one writer. I thought I'd never get to the point where I hired a writer, but I found someone who was an RVer who was looking for some side money. And I just sent them over a few, guides of how I write articles and a few keywords to go after. And that worked awesome for me. And then I hired another writer a few months later. So, and then that process was able to scale pretty easily to now we have a team of like 20 writers and 3 editors that are, pumping out 200 articles a month for both me and my clients' sites. But it's all about, I would say, just getting that process down, having the data guide you as far as the keywords, and then, being able to share that process with other people and document how it goes so you can then take the burden off yourself.
Can you share a bit how does it flow within the team? I mean, so do you have one writer who writes the stuff down, then you pass it to a proofreader, then you pass it to someone who's going to do the images? How does it, like really tactical, how does the process look like?
This is a great question. No one barely ever asked me this question. And because you are so right that it involves a lot of different pieces. I don't just hand a keyword off to one writer and expect them to do everything, because that would be overwhelming for that writer. And it would, probably slow the process down. So for me, I still do the keyword research. and I try to figure out what we're going to go after. And then I hand that off to an outliner. And then the outliner writes an outline based on the keyword so that the writer doesn't have to stare at a blank page.
Nice.
But then that outline goes to a writer writes it. Then it goes to an editor who edits it, puts it in my WordPress. And then we have what we call a polisher who then polishes the article. I'll take a glance at it, another glance look at it at the end and say, beautiful. 5 days later, I go from title to amazingly written article and just rinse and repeat.
Nice. Awesome. Do you use any tools in the process? I assume Ahref?
Totally. Ahrefs, SEMrush, those are the two keyword tools we use. Love both of those. I actually am a more fan of SEMrush, but only because that's the tool I learned on. So I have a bias to it. Inside WordPress, we'll use Yoast to any of your, ecom folks listening who kind of thinks all this sounds like a little overwhelming. If you use WordPress, Yoast is a really easy tool to use to make sure that you are spot on for your SEO. And it's very easy to understand. And then from there, we use, other platforms like Monday, just as far as guiding our process. It's kind of like a project management platform. And to schedule, we use CoSchedule.
So we've got the process covered. So can you share a bit about misconceptions, something that you've learned from experience that many people might believe it works, but doesn't really work?
Yeah, totally. And so this is the biggest misconception or the biggest mistake that I see people making is, first off, writing about what they want to write about, because then you're writing for an audience of one in that case. And you don't probably want to buy your own product online, because you already have it, I'm sure. So it's the biggest thing that I see people making mistake on all the time is not writing for the person who actually wants their product and is actually researching. So if you can break out of that thought process, and the writing might not be as fun, it might not be as quirky, but it will do its job as a piece of content marketing. So really knowing what your audience wants to read or who your audience is the biggest mistake that I see people not doing right out of the gate with content. And if they're not doing that, then the content can fall flat and they think, well, content doesn't work. But that's not the case. Content always works from what I've seen. It's just knowing how to present that content and knowing what to write about to get in front of those eyes.
I mean, this is a question that I ask all the SEO guys that I have as guests. What should one expect? Because the problem with SEO and content, like you said, it is cheap, but you don't see the return so fast. And many e-commerce people, they like using Facebook ads or Google Shopping, instant gratification stuff. If you see the day after, you see if you had the positive ROAS, you keep on spending. Otherwise, you just pause the asset. So what should one expect? This is the first question, in regards to time frame. And is there a certain threshold based on your experience that one should pass? Because obviously you guys already have a lot of you have an authority website, so it's easier to keep on ranking, I guess. So 2 questions: what time frame? What should one expect? And is there a threshold in your opinion?
Totally. So first question: if you're new to creating content, I would definitely give it 6 months. And I know for some people who want that instant gratification, 6 months sounds like endless amount of time. But if you can write 8 articles a month for 6 months, by the end of that 6 months, you're going to see it start working. And seeing it start working is great, because then it will only work more. Because by the end of 18 months, you're going to ask yourself, why haven't I been doing 30 articles a month? And by the time 24 months comes, you're going to have a team of writers because you see how valuable that content is. So I definitely think you need to give it 6 months. And as far as the domain authority question, we're running a lot of tests at our agency where we're launching new websites that we're not really sharing, to our audience. And we want to see that exact question, what can this website do if I launch it from scratch with absolutely no authority, but I start creating content on it? So in that case, what we're seeing with very niche specific keywords, we can see results in 2 months if we're focusing on pretty, specific keywords. As we go a little bit more forward, 4 months, 5 months, we can start seeing what I'm talking about with these medium level domain or keywords. So it's definitely doable. And it's one of the most frustrating things, trust me, on my end, whenever we have a website that's getting 3 million views a month, and then we're launching a brand new website, not putting anything towards it except content. And I can still get excited that, we just hit 25,000 views in a month. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It still feels like a win. So
For sure.
yeah, it's definitely doable.
In regards to, let's say a client joins your agency, so how would the process look like? Do you serve only specific types of customers in regards to like a revenue or certain niche? Can you share a bit about the onboarding process?
So our agency is called RV Digital Strategy Agency. You can probably tell by the name that we have a niche right there. It's because what we have is a team of outdoor enthusiasts and RVers who know so much about the space. So rather than trying to serve anyone, we'd rather lean into what our team is good at. And we're serving outdoor clients, RV clients and clients that make parts related to an RV or an outdoor adventure. And we're a small agency right now. So we are at capacity with putting out like 200 to 300 articles a month. And we're not looking to scale quite yet because we really want to make sure we're nurturing our team before we scale it too hard. But, for our agency, the only thing is that they have the vision that content takes 6 to 12 months to pay off, as far as a large corporation goes. And, if we can be on for 2 or 3 years on a contract, that would be a lot better for all of us because it is the long game. But the beauty about it being a long game is that once the system's working, it's going to pay those dividends for a much longer time than if just an ad were to be in place.
You have an awesome YouTube video, YouTube channel, and you speak about this in one of your blog posts, that the importance of having also a YouTube channel. So can you share a bit about why is YouTube? I mean, it's kind of straightforward. Why is YouTube important? But why do you find it important also for Google Discover?
My whole job, I feel like, is to make Google the happiest person in the world. And in order to do that, I need to be everywhere where Google is. So YouTube is definitely one of those places. And aside from that, whenever we're making content, adding more than just images is so important. So we want to embed a video inside every piece of content. If I have a video about that, that's great. If I don't, I'm still embedding a video. So for me, having a YouTube channel where I can mirror an article and publish those two together on the same day, have them interlinked to each other, I'm sending Google these signals that say, this is buzzworthy content. Here's the proof. It's on multiple platforms and people are, engaging with it on both of those platforms. Your YouTube channel and YouTube videos do not have to be anything elaborate. It can be a simple cell phone where you're just speaking through whatever the article you're writing about is, because some people just would rather receive content that way and not have to read it.
You said mirror the content. So can you elaborate what you mean by mirroring the content? So
totally. So I've done it a lot of different ways, but the way I like to do it now, because we have, writers that are getting these articles out a little bit in advance. So I can now see what's on the queue over the next week or two.
Quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time now, we would really, really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms. And it also supports our mission of helping as many people as possible to become better marketers and better entrepreneurs. So if you're not driving and it wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over your podcast app. And we will love you even more than we already do. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
And say one of the videos or one of the articles that is coming through is the 5 best lightweight RVs. So I think to myself, that's going to resonate with the community. They're going to like that article. I might as well double down and make a video about this too. So I don't just read the article, but I definitely have the article up in the background behind the camera, and I'm looking at the headers of that article and just kind of ad-libbing through the article. So it has the same structure, but not the same words. And then on that day, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I think you're about to answer what is my next question.
I was going to say on that day, I'll release both of them at the same time. But to that point, before I had a team of writers, whenever I was just creating content and I was doing a lot more YouTube content first, I would go through my YouTube videos and see what the most popular videos were and see if I could write a keyword article about those videos, because I knew something about those videos resonated with people. So if I could write an article about it too, then I might be able to imitate and get that success.
I'd like to dive in a bit for a bit more like tactical, even more tactical stuff. So how do you do? It's a general question, and obviously it might be a bit hard to answer, but can you share a bit the process of how do you look for keywords? Because I guess it's the most important, and you have a lot of golden nuggets. So if you have some tips about this.
Totally. The first important piece is to have a tool, that can help you, because otherwise it's a lot harder to understand what you're looking for. So SEMrush is the tool that I use. And for me, it's, you might need to search on YouTube just about how to, keyword research in SEMrush, because that's a whole video in and of itself, but it's not too challenging. As a quick example of how I do it is in their keyword, magic finder, I would type in the term RV for recreational vehicle. Mm-hmm. And then I would automatically filter that out to keywords that have between like 100 and 1,000 monthly views. And from there, I would, because I know the space, as any of your e-com people are going to know their space, they're going to immediately see keywords that they're like, oh yeah, I know what these people are searching for. I know what this person is searching for. So I would just say, with your knowledge of the industry that you're in, from that initial 1,000 to 100 keyword range, I would just start picking out keywords. And it's really not that important if you're going to put out 8 articles a month and you're just getting started. There's going to be a learning process, and we're going to have to see, what works and what doesn't with your specific community. So just start in that range and get to work. You'll find keywords that in that range that definitely resonate with whatever you're selling or whatever niche you're in.
A lot of times you get the keyword suggestions that are not necessarily so related to the product. So how far would you go? Let's say you're selling, you're trying to attract people who are into RVs, and you want to sell at the end of the funnel some sort of equipment for RVs. So what is like the farther away from RVs that you would write an article about?
Yeah, great question. Let's take a specific example of an RV trip router. So it's how you plan a trip. Where I'm creating content around that, I would go anywhere from RV parks in New Orleans, RV parks in California, any of those keywords where we're focusing on RV parks, because if people are looking for RV parks, they're probably going to try to find how to get there. And that I wouldn't venture too far away from that. But within that bubble, there are so many options, because we can take that outside RV parks and use the search term campgrounds. So then I could use campgrounds inside Yosemite National Park. And I could probably find 1,000 different keywords within that bubble. But basically, for selling that product, I'd want to make sure that it's at least focused on something where a traveler is going to have to physically take their RV to. So anything that fell within that range is what I would go after.
And then you're going to put internal links and try to push them downwards in the funnel, I assume?
Yes, most definitely. I want to give them the information in that article, but then I also want to let them know that, look, on your way to Yosemite National Park, you're going to encounter low-hanging bridges. So that means your RV might run into this bridge. That would be awful. You're going to come across large mountain passes. So that means you're going to climb up large mountains and then go down large mountains in an RV. And all these things are super challenging and can be dangerous. And then I would say, but hey, here's an easy solution. Check out this trip router and you'll avoid those things.
Nice. And do you suggest this trip router using like a pop-up in the website, or what would you do like in order to push the product that you're trying to sell?
My favorite way to push the product is that my last H2, which is just a header inside of an article. So it's like the last section of the article would always be like traveling to Yosemite National Park, or now you're headed to Yosemite National Park. And then the text of that last section would kind of be this very organic feeling opt-in. So I don't want to have too many pop-ups, and I want the article to feel like a complete article, even with that last kind of sales pitch at the end, where I'm still giving them information. And rather than just selling them something, I'm presenting them with a problem and then a quick solution.
This is awesome. I love the idea. And you mentioned the newsletter. So can we dive in a bit about regarding the newsletter? So you said that whenever you launch an article, so you're going to inform your list, but do you also create content that is specific for the newsletter? And how does this process look like?
Yeah, so my newsletter goes out every morning at like 6 or 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is feature 2 articles, the 2 that I'm releasing that day. So that's my first goal, is to get eyes on the newly published articles. But then I like to feature some piece of past content that usually has an affiliate angle to it or some sort of sales piece to it, but it's still a piece of content. So I can hopefully convert some sales as well with that newsletter. And then the last piece of the newsletter for me is just sharing other people's articles inside my niche. Even though that might sound counterintuitive because I'm giving traffic away to other people, I've found that readers love it because it's, it's saying, hey, look, other people are creating great content that you might be interested in. Mm-hmm. It gets my emails higher click-through ratings, which send signals to like Gmail. If they're receiving their email on Gmail, mm-hmm. Google's looking everywhere. Yeah. So if I'm sending an email, it hits the Gmail inbox and someone clicks on a link, that's sending great domain authority to the newsletter that I'm sending, which is, my website domain. All the pieces are connected, and I want to always optimize that engagement.
Mm-hmm. I love this idea. And I mean, it's very obvious when I talk to SEO guys that they are playing the long-term game, and doing this is like a long-term game, because you want your customers and the people on your list to be happy and to be satisfied with the content, and not always be selling and always be very aggressive. So when you point to a website that is not yours, so I think it resonates with the audience, and they see that you're all about providing great content. So
exactly, and building the trust. If you can build trust with your audience, that's one of the biggest pieces of it.
And I remember a question that I forgot to ask in regards to the subject that we talked before, in regards to internal linking. So do you have a process in which you retrospectively add internal links once, because you all the time you add articles, so you want maybe to link them as well. So do you have like a certain frequency in which you update all the articles, or someone who does the internal linking?
Yeah, as far as like internal linking, I try to always point back to some of my heavy hitter articles that have been proven to resonate. So if I'm writing an article about a new travel trailer that's popular right now, I'll always want to link back to my article about 5 reasons to avoid travel trailers, because that one is for some reason the most popular of all of them. So I would say just knowing what readers have already really enjoyed and doubling down on those pieces of content will give you consistent engagement. And as far as going back and updating old articles, it's a never-ending process, and it is very important to do. But in the beginning, don't fret about it. So if you're just getting started on your content journey, don't worry at all. If you've already created content for a year, you can make it a point to, after that year, see what's performing, what's not performing, and maybe you try to tweak the ones that haven't performed too well, and add and beef up the ones that have performed well, because they might be able to rank, say, number 1 or 2 instead of number 7 or 8.
I like you share a lot of small tricks that are very powerful, because like the fact of, instead of internally linking a lot to new articles, so what is already working, the big, like you said, the big hitters, and this makes everything so much easier. Once you have a smart process, so everything else becomes much easier. So this is also a great tip. Are there any other tips or questions that I forgot to ask?
Let me just say, I don't want anyone to be intimidated by content creation. I understand completely that to jump into something without an immediate payoff, and that takes some time because it involves writing, sounds like, it could be a burden. I would encourage everyone to give it 3 to 6 months at least, and just try it out, see what you learn, and see how your community responds to it. Because I would safely bet that there's going to be positive results. So if you have the time to carve out of your week, just try to make that happen, because content is the best way to drive traffic over the long haul.
Yeah, content is king. They say content is king.
Exactly.
So, in regards to the time, so how much would, like, let's say someone is just beginning. So do you think that someone can publish an article within like 3 or 4 hours? How much would you invest? Because some people are perfectionists and they want everything to be perfect. So one article a week is a good target for them. But you obviously, you started out with one article every day. So how much time should one invest in an article when they're just
perfection? So my wife, who also runs our company with me, she is a perfectionist, and I tried to get her to write some articles, and she spends probably a whole week to write the most perfect article with the most perfect information. And she does amazing research. But at the end of the day, one article a week isn't unfortunately going to move the needle. For me, I like to use a term, published is perfect.
Nice.
The fact that it's out there, it's perfect. There are always going to be typos. There's always going to be incorrect information that someone else points out, whether that's true or not, But the beauty of a blog post is that you can always change it and you can always update it. Getting it out there is the first step. Don't let the perfection ruin that. So, got to work with what you got. If you are a perfectionist, you got to try to let go a little bit, try to get 6 to 8 articles out a month. But otherwise, just get it out there and start testing, and think of it all as a big test that you're going to see results for.
When you did this on your own, so did you have like a bunch of did you do like the keyword research in a batch and then had a lot of outlines and then moved on to writing? Or did you do like every piece of content from A to Z? How did exactly this look like?
Yeah, good question. For me, I batch keyword researched, and then I wrote the articles entirely from there. It would be a great idea, though, if I were to have batched outlined for myself. I think if I were to do it all myself again, that would be the way to do it, because you don't get so overwhelmed by the blank page. I feel like I could knock through 10 outlines without any trouble, and then I could come back and visit those outlines later on. So you bring up a good point there, that is probably the best process.
Do you use any other tools, like for getting like there are like tools like people that give you like what people asked, or some people go to Quora or Reddit, or do you just use the SEMrush for the keyword?
Basically SEMrush. Once I find out something that works, I just try to stick with that. You can definitely get some ideas just through starting queries in a Google search bar, where it'll give you suggestions. If you really need to save some money, that's a way you can do it. But, it'll be shooting in the dark a little bit more if you do it that way. If you're using SEMrush, you can compare, different keyword difficulties to how you perform with them. So I would definitely recommend that. The one tool that I use that I did not use for the first year when I was writing the articles is a tool called Grammarly. It corrects my grammar, and man, oh man, I am not a good writer. So even though I wrote, an article a day, by no means does that mean it was a good article. Once I got Grammarly, I really was able to clean up my actual, grammar. Nice.
Yeah, I love Grammarly, and I also use a desktop tool. A website. Yeah. It's called Hemingway app, which also it tells you if the line is too long, and if you're too passive, the voice is too passive, and stuff like that. And recently, I started using Conversion AI, which is a tool that helps you write. It uses AI, and it's much better than anything else that I've ever seen in the past. So have you tried any AI tools?
Yeah, sounds great. I have tried a few AI tools. I've tried them to auto-populate a newsletter. It was from the recommendation of one of my business partners who dabbled with it as well. I just found that, AI is the future. For me, it's just not here yet as far as, completing enough of the task that it takes time off my plate.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And it sometimes seems so sexy to create a with AI and automate everything. But at the end of the day, a lot of the time I just get stuck in the automation and go back to outsourcing or delegating the task. So I agree with you that I don't think AI is here just yet.
Yeah, but it's fun. It is fun to play with.
It's too fun. The problem
That's
is too fun. Awesome, Kyle. So and you offer in your website the roadmap into Google Discover. So can you share a bit about this before we conclude?
Yeah, most definitely. So kylebrady.com is my website. And right on that main page, it's a free download. It's the Google Discover Roadmap. And it's really the exact steps that I've used, that we've used inside my agency, and that I've used with my clients to help them get into Google Discover. It spells it out, one step at a time as far as how the content is created, what you need to do inside the content as far as adding images and videos and stuff like that, and then how to distribute that content to optimize your chances of getting into Google Discover.
Awesome. And yeah, you just one last question regarding the images. So how do you normally use the images? Do you create your own images?
Yeah, I've started creating my own, and I would hate to, make it sound like it's a necessity to create my own images, but it does help it stand out whenever you're, stacked up against like CNN or the New York Times on the Google Discover feed, having something pop. But other than that, just basic stock images. I've found that there are some stock image companies out there that have organic feeling photos, and that's what I've been using for probably the past 2 years.
Nice. But obviously you do tweak the file name and the alt text in according to
Yes. As far as the technical side, you're absolutely right. It's always good to go the extra mile and tweak the file name, add the alt text, anything else that I can do as far as the image is concerned. But those are like the nuances that will help you, get a smallest bit higher than your competitor. So if you don't do them, it's not the end of the world, but definitely if you can do them, that's going to differentiate you.
So if we conclude, so in what you're saying is basically if you create enough content and it's good, so you shouldn't mind too much about the typos or the images or like the icing on the cake.
Yeah, you want, the best thing is to answer the user's question. And if you can do that and let them still have a good experience, a user or a reader is usually forgiving up to a certain extent. They can forgive a typo here and there. They can forgive a picture not having an alt text because they don't even understand what that is, So you want to give the user the best experience. You want to provide them the best information. If you're doing that, Google knows because they can see how the reader's engaging with the article.
Great. Kyle, thank you so much. A lot of insights and stuff to think about and obviously to optimize. Where can people see or get more about you guys, what you're doing? So you mentioned your website, but there is also Drivin Vibin and Facebook, LinkedIn.
Totally. So kylebrady.com, that's where you can kind of get the high level strategy part of it. But then if you want to see what I'm doing in the trenches every day, go over to drivinvibin.com. And that's where you see, me and my daily work right there as far as still creating the content. And then on LinkedIn, Kyle Brady or Brady SEO is where you can find me. Go over there. And, if you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. Have a lovely rest of the day.
I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi guys, this is Yaron again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, if you want to learn more about e-commerce and marketing, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is called EcomXFactor Official. Number two, check out our Facebook group, which is called EcomXFactor Marketing and E-commerce Mastermind. This is a great place to ask questions and connect with other business owners. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your friends and colleagues, plus leave a review at your favorite podcast app.